past 5-7 years, the 125cc segment, particularly the premium 125cc segment in India, has really taken off. And you can understand that because things like GST, BS6, ABS, CBS, all these norms came in and made bikes really expensive, which increased the appeal of 125s. Now, Bajaj already has the classic Pulsar 125, which is a huge success for the company, sells 40 to 50 to 60,000 units a month, and they also have the NS 125, which doesn't sell as much. This is Bajaj's third 125, it's the Pulsar N125, and its role is to take on the TVS Raider and the Hero Extreme 125, because those two bikes alone have created a sort of new premium, youthful, sporty 125 segment, and they account for at least 60,000 units a month together. Now, Bajaj has started from scratch with this motorcycle. It is not based on any of the other N platform bikes. It has a new chassis, a new engine, and a completely new look. Let's start with that because the Extreme and the Raider sell so well because of the way they look. Bajaj had to take them on, and they've come up with something really quite unique. It is a funky, polarizing design, and it's like nothing else out there. There's lots of floating panels all around, like out here. This panel particularly is really interesting. You usually see a panel along the back which makes the back of the bike look big. On this motorcycle, it's here in the center where the back is quite slim. Another fun thing I noticed is this, and there's an interesting story here as well. Now, it looks like aero, and aero on a 125cc bike is completely pointless, but here it actually has a function. The original design was closed off, but the engine developers went to the stylists and said, hey, we need air to cool the engine. So they opened this up, and that's actually functional aero on a 125. Now, this is a small motorcycle, and Bajaj has created this new platform to make it as light as possible, which we'll get back to in a bit. But one of the things that comes with that is a really slim front fork. It's just a 30mm diameter telescopic fork. So to get around that, they've put these large chunky shrouds around it. I think it's a bit too much, but it does give the bike much more purpose and presence at the front. Finally, you've got these trademark Pulsar swooping lines out here, these tank panels. The tank itself is not as long as you would see in other Pulsars, but this looks familiar. The tail section also has the typical Pulsar twin strake tail lamp, but it's a nice funky modern looking unit. Switchgear is also new. It comes off the N family. It looks quite nice, but you have basic halogen lighting up front. There's also a USB charger out here. In general, this is a stylish, funky and unique looking bike, and it also comes in some very youthful colors. Now, part of a new platform is what that means for the seat. So we're going to call Ashley in here to show you what this looks like. Ashley is 5'6" tall. This has a 795mm seat height. Ashley, all yours. Okay, so both his toes are on the ground, and Ashley tells me this feels kind of like his 125cc bike at home. No surprises there. So while the seating position works for someone of average height, it's also not bad for a tall rider as well. I find that there's plenty of room. The foot peg to seat ratio is not cramped. It's a little sporty, it's a little high up, and there are benefits to its height, which we'll come to soon. But in general, this is a nice, comfortable riding position. What I don't like is the handlebar. This feels very much like a commuter handlebar in the way that it looks. It's not wide enough. I think a slightly more sporty handlebar would have really gone with the vibe of this bike. But in general, it's quite comfortable, and the pillion seat seems to be spacious as well. Now let's talk about the other new element of this motorcycle, that engine. This is an all-new engine. Bajaj tells us it has almost nothing to do with the older Pulsar 125cc motors, but despite the fact that it's new, it still has a kickstarter because that's an important feature for customers in this segment. Now, power and torque figures are up there with the best in the segment. It's about 12 horsepower, 11 Newton meters of torque, but the big thing here is that the power to weight ratio is the best in the segment, and that's because this bike weighs quite little. It's only 125 kilos, and in fact that was one of the definitions of this project. Bajaj wanted to make a new 125cc bike that weighed 125 kilos. So the power to torque ratio is good. It's got a 5-speed gearbox. Another thing Bajaj is quite proud of is that the clutch is super light. They say 50% less effort required than the competition, and yeah, it's really one finger effort. That's also quite nice to use. To show you what this engine sounds like, as you noticed, it's got a silent start. That's only in the top model. Like with all the new N engines from the N Pulsars, this is really smooth. It has a nice deep note. It's a very nice engine. Refinement is excellent. You'll only feel very mild vibrations in the bars and the foot pegs at very high RPMs. In general, it's a super smooth engine. In fact, I noticed something unusual with this engine, which is something I don't think I've seen with any other bike before this. And that's when you're riding in traffic and you come to a jam and you slow down. It's so smooth that the engine doesn't tell you that it's about to stall. So there were a couple of times where it took me by surprise. The engine was just off. I didn't realize it had stalled. I didn't realize it was about to stall. And part of that problem is that this instrument console does not have a rev counter. It does not have a gear position indicator either. We have spent just a few hours with the bike today. Maybe as you spend more time with it, you'll get used to that. But the fact is, it's a really smooth engine. It's also tractable, so you will be in third gear, 20 kilometers an hour. It doesn't complain. But when you get into those situations, you have to be aware that the engine may just stall on you and it's not going to give you much of a warning. As for actual performance, like I said, the motor is nicely tractable. That's a good thing in a commuter motorcycle. Fueling is very smooth. It feels natural. Performance seems to be about on par with the Raider and the Extreme. Top speed should be about 100 kilometers an hour. It gets to about 80-85 peacefully, and then it's a slow climb above that. I did notice that the meat of the performance comes at the higher parts of the rev range. So if you want to go fast, you do have to rev it out. And as the revs build, you'll feel it start to pick up pace. In general, I think the performance levels are good for a motorcycle like this. The really nice part about this bike though is its dynamics. Now, like I said, it's just 125 kilos. Only the TVS Raider is lighter by 1 or 2 kilos, but this is a very nimble motorcycle, very agile. We've been riding it around on a go-kart track. That's what we got to do first today, and good fun. I mean, it's not a sporty motorcycle particularly, and I'll get to why in a bit, but it's a very light and easy and agile handler, and for life in the city, that is excellent. Not at all overreactive. It doesn't do anything strange. It doesn't lean over too quickly. It just feels easy. That is nice. It's also running on some nice MRF tires. On this surface, it was perfectly good, no complaints there. What I will complain about slightly is that the disc brake needs a little too much effort, and that takes away from some of the sporty character of this motorcycle for me. That and the narrow handlebar. So while the bike does seem to have an element of sportiness to it, it still feels slightly more focused towards the comfort side of this segment. Now, while light and agile handling is great to have, what's even more relevant is that the suspension setup on this bike is really good. There's 125 mm of travel at both ends, but the more relevant thing is that it soaks up bad roads and bumps really well. For a 125cc bike, the suspension is very good and I have no complaints in that regard. Now, Bajaj has launched the N125 in 2 versions. The nice thing is that both versions get a disc brake as standard. The differences between the two, they're not that big. You get unique color schemes, you get the ISG, which gives you that quiet start and the start-stop system. You also get a slightly wider tire on the top version, and there is Bluetooth compatibility on this model. The final thing is that this top version gets a different LCD display. As far as features go, certain things are nice. You get full LED lighting, you get the start-stop system, quiet start. But compared to the competition, this bike does lack out in certain ways. For me, the most glaring misses are the fact that it should have had a rev counter and a gear position indicator. But beyond that, there's also no option of ABS, although Bajaj says that they will give it single-channel ABS if the market demands it. Finally, I want to talk about quality and fit and finish. In many areas, the bike looks nicely put together, but certain things can improve. For example, these panels sound a little rattly, these ones don't. And there is a visible difference in the panel gap between the right side and the left side, and that's something the rider can see, at least on our bike. I also think that the plastic cladding around this fork shroud is a little rough. It could be finished a little better. In general, these are small things, but they do stand out, and I think Bajaj has some room for improvement here. Nevertheless, Bajaj has been really competitive with the price, and even the top model costs less than ₹1 lakh ex-showroom, which makes it more competitive than the Raider and puts it bang on par with the Extreme 125. Now, availability for this motorcycle will start in northern states like UP because that's the big demand for Bajaj's 125cc models, and the company says that it will scale out to the rest of the country by Jan or Feb. From what I've seen here today, this is a credible rival to the likes of the Raider and the Extreme. It will appeal to people who already like Bajaj's 125s but want something new, something fresh. This is the motorcycle for them. Is it the best bike in the class though? Well, that's not an answer I can give you today. We're going to have to ride it back to back against the TVS and the Hero, and only then can we give you our final verdict.